Yeah, get down a little bit here. Here. Okay, I better. Is this thing going? Yeah, it's going. Okay, it's going. So, okay, this next story about to read is called Flash Drive. The Flash Drive. Yeah, Flash Drive coming up. Yeah, Flash Drive. Now, this is a little different looking. Okay. The still shaken Daniel Kabashi drove his big rig down a dark, snowy highway, not of his choosing, in an effort to avoid what looked like more terror awaiting him in his life. He had survived what seemed to be a highway robbery, but he knew it was far more serious than that. Looking up into what was left of his driver's side mirror, he scanned the blackness behind him to see if he was still being pursued. No sigh of relief came to him, even though the bullet-ridden mirror showed nothing but darkness. Wow, it almost got me, he muttered with wide, frightened Asian eyes. Daniel turned the dial on his Cobra CB and scanned to see if there was any talk of action that had taken place an hour before. As he scanned, he noticed that he was beginning to lose traction as he was going up a hill on Nevada's Highway 6, the bleakest, most desolate stretch of road he had ever encountered as a still somewhat new trucker. I wonder if there will be any cops to pull me over for having a headlight crushed out, he mused. Thoughts followed of what kind of job he might get after being fired from trucking for having too many truck dents on his record. Going back to teaching now is out of the question, he said out loud. As the truck got closer to the summit, Daniel noticed that there were tracks of a car ahead of him, tracks that were nearly leveled with snow, but still visible. The more he climbed up the hill, the more he noticed that the tracks ahead of him were zigzag. Being that he didn't have chains on, he noticed that his truck was starting to play the game, was starting to play that game a little also. When Daniel reached the top of the hill, he put the beater belt in second gear and slowly started going down the hill with his foot completely away from the brake. As he looked down the road, he saw what seemed to be a car on the side of the road. On close inspection, Daniel saw that it was against a boulder. And it was up against a boulder. He wanted to see if he could help whoever might be trapped inside. But he'd have to put on the brakes, and in doing so, lose control, possibly ending up down in what looked like a ravine. As he slowly passed the car, he noticed that he noticed the prettiest eyes looking up at him. A blonde girl of about 20, maybe even younger, was looking like she needed help. As Daniel doubted, as although Daniel doubted he could be seen, being that she was possibly blinded by the rig's lights, he knew she was going to be feeling bad, as he would have to keep on moving to keep from skidding. After Daniel found the road level enough to safely apply the brakes, he put on a big black hairy coat and gloves, then ran as fast as he could to see if he could help the cute young damsel in distress. When Daniel got to the car, he noticed the girl had her back to him. He didn't know if knocking would frighten her, so he kind of pawed at the window with his gloves. The pawing was more frightening, and she quickly turned about, pointing a gun at him before lunging to the door and locking it. Daniel's figure crouched down a bit as he flashed his. Yeah, yeah. Daniel's figure crouched down a bit as he flashed her effortless smile. "Hello," he waved. He then shouted to the rolled up window, "Do you want me to get you help?" "Yeah, do you want me to get help?" The girl shouted, "I've got a gun pointed at you." She got a better look at Daniel, who, to her, seemed to be in his late 20s, but due to the darkness could have been older. Daniel didn't seem afraid of the gun. Instead, he just shouted, "Good! A pretty girl like you in this day and age probably needs one. But again, do you want to see if I can get you help? Get help for you?" After what seemed a while of thinking about, the girl still kept the gun on Daniel before rolling down the window a bit. "Can you?" she asked, in a voice that was pleasant to Daniel's ears. "Why, hello," smiled Daniel, before adding, "Phone service doesn't work out here, and we are so far out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I don't think my CD will reach anyone at all. However, I do have Qualcomm, and I can get my company to call 911 for you." 911. Yeah, I can call 911 for you. Help should arrive in a couple of hours. You might need you might need me to get you a few blankets out of my rig. They need washing, but they should keep you warm until help comes. The girl looked as though she were in deep thought. She then said, "How come you didn't stop but kept going?" Daniel laughed. I noticed I was starting to lose traction on the way up the hill. I thought it might be worse on the way down. When I saw your car, had slid out of control, there was no way in hell that I was going to put on brakes and possibly crush you up against this boulder you hit. I hated to pass you up like that, but I hated to pass you up like I didn't care, but we'd now be in the same situation if I had applied those brakes. By the way, if it makes you feel safer to keep that gun pointed at me, then keep it on me. But I'm pretty harmless. Well, to most people I am. There's a serial killer here who is supposed to be a trucker. Yeah, there's a serial killer around here who's supposed to be a trucker," said the girl with concern. "Yeah, I've heard that. Well, again, if it makes you feel safe, then continue to point it at me. But if you start getting shivery, please point it to the ground. By the way, you look like you're freezing." "I'm not warm," said the girl with chattering teeth. "I'll go back to my rig and get those blankets. Then I'll contact my company to see if they can get you a tow. Man, I hope you have money for that." The girl looked like she was in deep thought. She then said, "Can you drive me to a shop?" Daniel thought, then said, "I hate to say this, but I'm new to this road. Normally, I wouldn't be caught dead on a highway like this, especially out at this time. But certainly, certain things came up, and I don't know where a shop is located. How about if I take you to the nearest town on my way to my drop-off? This town should certainly have a tow truck. Do you have AAA?" The girl seemed to be realizing that Daniel probably wasn't a monster. Is it? Yeah, the girl seemed to be realizing that Daniel probably wasn't a monster. "Is it true that guns aren't allowed on rigs?" she asked. The trucker nodded for a yes and said, "They aren't allowed anywhere, thanks to that executive order passed a month ago. As a matter of fact, if the DOT found a gun on my rig, I'd not only be fired on the spot by my company, I'd be arrested as well. But guess who has guns on his rig?" "You're armed?" The girl's eyes widened. I'm not now, but I have some guns on my rig. For what? You wouldn't be talking to me right. You wouldn't be talking to me now if I hadn't had them a couple of hours ago. The girl raised her gun and pointed it at him again. Daniel smiled. It's a long story, but I guess you have to decide whether or not you want to ride with me or sit it out here and hope I'll call you some help. True? The girl didn't say anything. Daniel became more serious. Well, I'll get back to my truck, get on that ancient Qualcomm to get you some help, and get you some blankets, but I'll need your name. My name is Daniel Kabashi. He extended his hand. The girl paused. With the gun pointed at him, she shook Daniel's hand and said, Sally Woods. Daniel turned and started walking back to his rig. As he walked to his rig, he heard footsteps in the darkness. I need to see that you aren't getting those guns instead of doing your Qualcomm thing to get help, said the girl called Sally Woods. Fine, said Daniel. A few minutes later, Daniel heard the rumbling of an idling rig. She followed Dan around a bend, and there, before her eyes, on the road, was Dan's rig. Daniel climbed up onto the Peterbilt, kicked off the snow, and climbed into the cab. He picked up the Qualcomm and started doing things on it called macros. The heat coming out of the cab, flowing down onto Sally, felt like heaven, even though it reeked strongly of old cigarettes and coffee. She didn't realize just how cold she was. She didn't realize just how cold she had been until standing in the doorway next to Daniel in his driver's seat. As he started pressing buttons on the Qualcomm, Sally could see that he really was trying to help her. She dropped the gun to her side and suddenly stopped his hand, saying, I trust you. I'm almost done, said Daniel. Sally looked sad and said, if you send help for me, if you send for help, I'll be seeing my boyfriend, well, roommate again. Just get me out of here. Just get me out of here. Daniel smiled and said, my company will fire me if I give anyone a free ride. Of course they will fire me if they find out that I've got guns. Do they have to know? Asked Sally. Daniel looked like he had a lot in his mind and said, oh, I'll start it again here.